You know who's not being the bigger man? That'd be Mark Cuban. So Russell Westbrook and the Thunder were in Dallas yesterday, where Mark Cuban and the Mavs got the best of them. Pre-game, Cuban stirred the pot a little, saying the MVP battle, it's a toss-up between James Harden and LeBron James, with Kawhi Leonard also deserving of mention in that conversation, and making it clear that Westbrook is not in the mix based on his criteria. Now, the Thunder are 35-28 and are on pace to fall short of 50 wins, which Cuban considers the benchmark for a player to be considered a superstar, much less an MVP candidate. That is his criteria. Max Kellerman, is he right?
No, he's wrong. Russell Westbrook is clearly a superstar. In fact, he was a superstar when Mark Cuban made the comment last year. And I understand. Look, let's start with this. Okay. The man is averaging a triple-double. Season's 3 quarters over, the man's averaging a triple-double. For a winning team in the Western Conference, that's a whole lot without another go-to scorer on the team. That is a whole lot.
But he's not a superstar.
Now, right. Now, when Oscar Robertson did it in 1962, which is the last time it was done, triple-double for an entire season, should Westbrook do it, and he's close, the pace of the game was much faster. There were many more possessions. And so it was easier to accomplish. That's the reason it hasn't been done for so long, and Westbrook is doing it now for a winning team in the Western Conference, clearly a superstar. Why is Mark Cuban doing this? He's trapped by his own logic. 50 wins and a playoff series win. He hasn't done it yet, therefore not a superstar. But why does Cuban choose to be trapped by his own logic publicly, Stephen A? Look, it's called trolling nowadays, right? And Cuban's basically admitting to as much. But back in the old days, when Muhammad Ali would talk about Joe Frazier or Rowdy Roddy Piper would talk about Hulk Hogan, it was called showmanship or show business. And that's essentially, we just call it trolling now, and it sounds worse. But that's what Cuban's doing, and he's admitting to it. What fun would it be if I took it back now? That's all that's going on.
You're probably right, because here's the deal. The Dallas Mavericks have the worst offense in basketball. Let's put that in. And their leading scorer is Harrison Barnes, who was like a 4th or 5th wheel on the Golden State Warriors last year. So we got to take all those things into consideration when we look at the Dallas Mavericks. But I'm going to say this. Here's where you and I are going to disagree. You dismiss it, out of hand, simply as trolling or whatever. Russell Westbrook is a top 2 league MVP candidate, and he is a superstar in this league, no question. But I do think that it's difficult to summarily dismiss what Mark Cuban is saying, because what Mark Cuban is doing is something that I've done on numerous occasions in the past, Max. I have categorized and challenged others to define and characterize what a true superstar was. Yep. Max and I have talked about the name Blake Griffin. Blake Griffin is not a superstar to me. He is not a superstar. He is a star, but he is not a superstar. Melo is a superstar offensive talent, but he's not a superstar the likes of LeBron and others. These are the kind of things that I have paid attention to. And so when I look at it from that perspective, I think about a guy like Russell Westbrook, and even though I think Mark Cuban is wrong, I appreciate while Mark Cuban is wrong about Russell Westbrook, I like where he went when he tried to classify and define what a true superstar should be. He talked about winning 50 games, at least. Why are we talking about you if you're 42-40 or something like that? That's a big deal. I can respect that. I take into account box office, because you know what that means to me. You got to have some box office swag if your name ain't Tim Duncan, or in this day and age, Kawhi Leonard. If you ain't one of those two individuals, you ain't playing for Grand San Antonio Spurs, you got to have some box office appeal. I also have to look at your efficiency. Russell Westbrook is averaging 31, 10, and 10. But when you shoot 42% from the field, and other candidates we're talking about are at 49, 52, 53%, well, then we got a different argument there. So we got to take all of those things into consideration. If you're Mark Cuban, I can understand people getting on them, and I think we got to a point where we got to start asking questions about the Dallas Mavericks, because I'm a fan of Mark Cuban. I like Mark Cuban a great deal. But you won the finals more than 5 years ago. You ain't been out the first round since. You've been bounced out in the first round 4 times, and you missed the playoffs once. We all know about the greatness of Rick Carlisle. There's nothing to talk about there. He's a fantastic coach. But in a city of Dallas, the state of Texas, no state income taxes. As beautiful as that city is, I cannot understand why they can't get more talent. So when you got the worst offense in basketball, right, ranked 30th, and you talking about one of the prolific offensive players in this game today, and you don't want to classify him as a superstar while your offense kind of stinks, that's problematic. But again, I do appreciate where he's going.
That's a good point about the Mavericks. I've often wondered, how it is that Mark Cuban, who's considered a team-friendly owner and a player-friendly owner, in a player-friendly city, in a warm-weather city, who's willing to spend money, give the fans a good experience, and is trying constantly to attract A-level free agents, is never able to do it. That is a failing of Mark Cuban as an owner. He'd probably cop to that. Let's get back to the definition of superstar. Mark Cuban has a very workable definition there. 50 wins and a playoff series win. I think I have a better one. A superstar is a player who's actually worth the max contract. What do I mean by that? I mean, max contract is not simply some arbitrary number that's very high. It's based on a percentage of the cap. So are you worth 25 to 30% of all the financial resources under the cap and still maybe win a championship or compete for one? Is that player worth it? Under that definition, I think Blake Griffin is a yes, though I admit it's not as slam dunk as it once was, so to speak. Russell Westbrook is clearly worth a max contract. A guy like DeMar DeRozan, who has one, is a really, really good player, is not worth 25 to 30% of someone's available cap space or total cap space, in my opinion. You bring up Westbrook and Cuban's definition. Was Allen Iverson a superstar?
Oh, no question.
Allen Iverson, in a much weaker conference, took a team that you've cited many times was built around him, was built to complement what he did, to a finals and lost. Westbrook has not been as fortunate, though he has been to a finals. It was with better players than Iverson in a much tougher conference. I fail to see where Iverson, the player, is ranked ahead of Westbrook, the player, prime to prime.
Well, first of all,
it's close.
But stay with me. Stay with me. First of all, Iverson was about 4 inches shorter and about 30 pounds lighter, at least, number one.
Not pound for pound ranking.
Well, it matters. When you're taking into account what a guy does, you have to look like, for example,
Isaiah Thomas?
Stay with me. If I'm sitting up in here and I'm averaging 30, right, that's a big deal. Very impressive. But if I'm Kevin Durant and I'm averaging 30, but I'm Spud Webb and I'm averaging 30, who are you going to look at incredulously and say, well, wow, you're going to look at Spud Webb because why? He's 5'9" and averaging 30.
Shaq was 7'1", 300 pounds. He wasn't a superstar?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that you look at it differently. In other words, when you look at Shaq and his dominance, you look at a dude that's 7 feet, 350 pounds, even though he's dominant, you kind of expect it.
Where do you rank Westbrook in terms of the list of active players? You got LeBron, you got Durant, Anthony Davis. Of all the non-tall players.
Top five for me. Well, first of all, he's talking about, but he's not only top five, but here's the point that I really wanted to get to. Mark Cuban really, really doesn't have an argument. If you look at Dirk Nowitzki, he was a superstar. The next year, he went out in the first round after winning 67 games. And so when you look at it from that perspective, it's like Dirk Nowitzki's a champion. Obviously, Russell Westbrook is not. But I'm saying, looking at Russell Westbrook carry this team, you can't take anything away.
Westbrook's definitely in the MVP conversation.
He could be even better. He's clearly a superstar. And Mark Cuban's admitting it. He knows it. He's trolling you.